This is where the presentation actually begins. My name is Janae Hanson. My name should be Janae Stewart. My lineage of service goes back to the Civil War, and then I have a picture of all of my family and their service clear back to Civil War. And then I'm going to tell about how my great-grandpa from World War I gave away my grandpa to his sister after he got back from World War I, and that my family from World War II, my great-grandpa gave away my grandpa to his sister. We lost our name. My grandpa was an alcoholic and basically quit being a dad to my dad. So alcohol addiction, and then go over that. But I've got a chart that I'm going to explain that better. So after I do that, I'm going to say, I've always been patriotic, but over the last few years of realizing the devastation that has been done to our beautiful America, it has ignited a fire in me that has remained stuffed for several reasons. My own ability to speak truth, our previous government, and thinking to myself, why aren't we doing anything? Every statue that was crumbled, every flag that was burned, every illegal entry, limb loss, life loss, suicide of a veteran, wives left husbandless, wives left handling the life at home tour after tour, or my family, a name lost. Generations of systemic trauma, addictions, and I feel like, hold on, okay. A name lost, generations of systemic trauma. The price for our freedom simply cannot be measured, and the generations before us or after us need to remember it and embrace it. I am here at Defending Freedom because I'm a proud, Bible-believing, gun-carrying American patriot, and I will not be scared into silence, and as Toby Keith once said, I will not back down. My family's sacrifices have paved the way for my freedom of speech, and I'm going to use it today. Will you let me? We have an American epidemic, a corrupt and broken system of cover-up and sin that is yielding countless victims, and I am one of them. A corrupt and broken system of cover-up and sin. I'm here to talk about, forget that, I did that twice. I'm here to talk about toxic churches that incubate abuse, a system that has predatory self-managing and self-regulating tactics that make it a predator's feeding ground. And sadly, yes, the ravenous wolves smell the smell of the wounded, and a shark-feeding frenzy ensues that there's blood in the water. We must have religious reform that brings us back to the true standards of what God intended for leaders. And the litmus test is biblical principles, and the standards should be very high. You should not be able to be a pedophile and buy a $25 ordination certificate off the internet and be able to lead children. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'll let you decide if it's fact or fiction. Once upon a time, there was a little girl. Her daddy came home from Vietnam, a broken, addicted shell that led his family into chaos. She never got to have the dad that comforted her, helped her with life's trials, or made her feel safe. She actually had to take care of him and her entire family from a very young age. Always apologizing ahead of time everywhere she went, avoiding the shame of bad clothes, being poor, addicted, inconsistent parents, and the constant of not fitting in anywhere she was most of her entire life. She had eaten from trash dumpsters, gone from drug house to drug house, and had grown men kiss her all over the face. One of the drug houses, the man was later found dead in a dumpster. Another was charged with doing things to underage girls, and this was clear back in the 70s. Growing up with her beautiful codependency, she says beautiful because she would not have changed a thing. Looking back, Jesus had her the entire time, cupped in his hands, and still does. She tolerated situation after situation, and yes, made many mistakes herself along the way. Many wrong roads, and a couple marriages later, she prayed a very specific prayer. She thought God had answered and delivered her, the man of God, on a silver platter. She immediately thought she fell in love when he said, I'm not going to tell you my opinion, I'm going to tell you what the Word of God says about it. referring to some things from her previous marriage. Suffice to say, he had me at hello. It dismantled all her inhibitions and cautions. For some reason, the pastor card granted him unlimited access to her entire life without vetting the truth and actual facts. He preyed on her vulnerability, but she was also responsible for many of her poor choices. Life is funny that way. She believed she would be protected from harm and loved as Christ loved the church. He had said he was a former pastor, and although had made an indiscretion, told many, many stack lies. And whenever she questioned it, there was abuse towards her. She did not expect to, hold on 1 second. This is my trial run. She did not expect to be shoved down, phones broken, TVs shattered, feet stomped on, hands crushed, shoved to the ground so hard her pelvis ached for 2 days. Her daughter shoved into a wall. She also was shook so violently that pajamas ripped on 3 separate occasions. Most of the abuse she kept silent. She didn't want to believe it herself. She did not want to even admit to it. You see, she had been through so much that she would not be a victim of domestic abuse. She's a strong woman. She was under a narcissistic spell that was indeed, I need to change this, that she was under a narcissistic spell, and her dysfunctional view of the situation she did in fact, with all her heart, want to be the godly wife and unction her husband to change with a Christ-centered viewpoint of forgiveness and grace. She failed at many times, but her heart was pure in trying. She fasted, she prayed, she forgave, she went to the altar. Yes, she worshiped. She did take it as maybe it was her fault, maybe if she hadn't pushed him so hard on certain issues, and she was insistently told to forgive and quote unquote, "You better forgive me or I'm going to divorce you." What if she had pushed him, was her mantra. She remembered all God had done for her, and she was still thankful for all the blessings. She still had Jesus. Yes, she worshiped, she prayed, and she fasted. During this time, he had started preaching again, and it was very hard to reconcile the man he was at home with the version of him at church. There were times people had asked him to come pray with them that was not in public, that wasn't a name in the community, that had no benefit to him, and repeatedly she watched the man he was on the pulpit not be the man he was in the community or at home. Fast forward a couple years later, the beginning of the end was 2 situations that happened that she knew 100% were not her fault. She had done nothing wrong. He had officiated his best friend's son's wedding, and I guess was in the spirit of wedding bliss. He said he was really sorry he did not let her have a nice wedding, and you see everything she had brought up to buy, even a Facebook dress of $125. He said very harshly that we didn't need to spend that kind of money, and she kept his wishes about the wedding. She paid for most of everything. It broke her heart worse when he did not even bother to wash his truck, and it was all muddy, and we had to leave the church in her white dress, knowing he had really not done anything to prepare and make her feel special that night. She said it's okay. True to form, he would blast out another false promise, another love bomb he would not keep. How would you like to maybe go on a cruise or something really nice in lieu of that? Her heart was so full. It made her so happy, and it meant the world, because the way he had handled the wedding did hurt her a lot. For reference, the year before, he had wanted her to go fly fishing with his dad and nephew. She declined adamantly because, being the only female, it'd be hard to change and hard to use the restroom in an intense situation, and she didn't want everybody to feel uncomfortable, so she went to see her family instead. When he offered that, when he was so nice to offer going on a cruise or something, she felt really obliged to be able to use her imagination and say, "You know what I would really love?" She had saw an Airbnb right by a river and said, "If you're serious," she said, "what I would really love to do would love to have time with you and to be able to go out and to fish. He said we could do that. He said they could do that. She said her soul needed rest and it would mean a lot. It felt nice to dream. Almost everything was his way. He spent thousands on himself and yes, would do a few nice gestures, but it was a different strainer and a different set of rules of his wants and needs versus hers. She typically wanted to do the best for he and his entire family and his grands, and he seemed to always be doing just the bare minimum or the cheapest version to fit his agenda. Fast forward a couple weeks and out of nowhere, he gets up off the couch and says, well, I talked to Dad today. He can't go fishing. She said, he was never going to go fishing, remember? It was our trip. Then per usual gaslit her and said, yes, he was. I told you. She said, you're lying. And heartbroken, she said she knew and wanted it to be a kind of trip, and he knew it because he knew she didn't want to be around other guys. This was her trip. He grabbed her by the shoulder, neck, and throat, threw her up against the corner of the wall, pressing her shoulder so hard that the light switch left a 3-inch deep wide scratch from impact, and said, I'm going to kill you. This abuse could not be manipulated to be her fault and was a turning point. She had done nothing wrong but to say, you're lying, and he was. She trusted a godly woman with details of the situation and also a seemingly spiritual woman from church. She was also desperate, hurt, confused, and could not reconcile the man who was on the pulpit with how he was at home. He was hard, easily angered, and never took responsibility for anything he did. He blamed her. After reaching out to her pastor's wife and did not expose the situation, she said, how do you listen and get fed from them on the pulpit when they're not the same at home? She responded, and it was helpful. I learned a long time ago he's just a man. And honestly, I don't remember what else she didn't remember what else she said, but that was enough to block out the abuse and to cover the situation. She could not block it out. She tried to block it out. She could not block it out for long and felt like she had tried everything and finally felt brave enough to address it and get some much needed help for them. Her intent was not to expose him, but to get help for their marriage and build a foundation. She had come to the conclusion, as far as her own walk with the Lord, that maybe her calling was him. She wrote down a meeting and wanted to schedule it with the pastor and his wife on 9/21/24, and it is as follows. So I think most of you have seen those notes of that. And I'm going to stop this video. So this is video number 2. I'm at 13 minutes. So hang on, please.